Oh, God, what a question. I'm looking forward to a Gaian world in which beings with our sorts of consciousness can live and thrive and help the whole planet to thrive, help Gaia thrive in her self-realization, which requires wild country, a very, very large amount of wild country, maybe 70%, with us, with her, on the journey of self-discovery with her, with our planet. If I could live in a society like that, my goodness. I look forward to that. I mean, it will happen sooner or later, somewhere in the universe, it will happen.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Going Out, Looking In, the podcast about the big questions of life, personal growth and spirituality. My name is Maxi, I'm your host, and get ready for a special and scientific episode with me today. And scientific, not in the sense of boring, dry, academic, all in the head, facts and theories kind of science. No. That's not what we're doing here. We are going to be going deep into the mechanics of planet Earth, into the mechanics of life, into the mechanics of nature, into where are we coming from, where are we going, why are we here, and how can we live in harmony with what is. Today I'm speaking with Dr. Stephan Harding from Schumacher College in Britain, in the UK. And oh my God, it was an honor to speak with Stephan. Such a beautiful conversation with such a beautiful soul. Let me give you some background on Stephan's very extensive vita. Stephan was born in Venezuela in 1953, and he, since childhood, has had a deep fascination for ecology, for nature, for Gaia, if you want to say so. And he then went on to study zoology at the University of Durham, as well as a doctorate in Oxford. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I spoke to a doctorate of Oxford. Check. Stephan is also a founding member alongside the great James Lovelock of Schumacher College, which he, co-founded in 1990, and he is also the author of Animate Earth, Science, Intuition and Gaia, which was published in 2006, as well as a new book which he is the editor of, which is called Grow Small and Think Beautiful. And now the personal story around Stephan and myself is that I watched a YouTube video, and the title of this video is called Learning to Value. I will include it in the show notes, and I can only highly recommend you to watch it. Learning to Value. And this is also a shout out to Sam, the guy who did this video. If you are hearing this, you did an amazing job with that video. Great job of capturing Stephan's home grounds, where he lives and works from, at Schumacher College, in fact, in the south of England. And he captured those beautiful conversations and thoughts that Stephan shared with him in that conversation. And the whole piece comes together very beautifully. And it was the ignition and the starting point of my research around Stephan. And so I did get in touch with him, and shortly after we recorded this episode, and wow. And wow, he said it also on the podcast. It was very personal. He shared from the heart, and we really dissected the science behind this big phenomena, of nature, living on planet Earth. What does that mean? What kind of responsibility that comes with, for us as humans, and especially the Western society, Gaia. The whole field of Gaia, the great mother, the living, breathing organism, which is, the world that we live in. It's more than just, trees and rocks and water. It's a full-on breathing and sentient being, whom we can connect and resonate with and communicate with. And that's Stephan's work, and he dedicated his life to it. It's called Deep Ecology, Fields of Deep Ecology. And we went, deep on all of those kind of subjects, spirituality, how those all of those fields are interwoven. And how can we just simply live a good life while having a deep understanding of the absolute beauty and perfection of our ecosystem? And how can we preserve it? How can we cherish it? How can we be living in harmony with it? All of that. We talked about meditation. We talked about my time in the monastery, his time in monasteries. And of deep experiences within nature, and how much time we can spend just with a plant, just by looking at a plant, really looking. And so this episode is really something special. I say that a lot about my episodes, and they're all special, of course. Don't let this be another episode you listen to. Don't let this be just another podcast. And I really recommend you to take your headphones and go for a walk with this episode. Go for a walk. Enjoy nature and listen to what Stephan has to say and share. So with that all being said, much fun with this episode. So much love from my heart to yours. I'm really happy right now. I'm in a good place. The island here is just beautiful. And I'm looking forward to share many more episodes with you, many more conversations, and take you, with me. I love you. I love you. Thank you for being here. And with that being said, I'll bring you Dr. Stephan Harding. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. Yes, I'm okay. I've slept reasonably well. I'm feeling quite calm, and the weather's nice out here. So yeah, I'm okay. And you? How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. I don't know if you know of the island called Sylt.
No,
On the no, you do?
no, I don't.
No, you don't.
No.
It's on the northern tip of Germany. It's like a small, tiny island, and
All right.
bordering the North Sea. So it's very beautiful, beautiful beaches that you wouldn't actually assume to be found in Germany.
Brilliant. And that's
But
where you are. You're there. Gosh,
yeah,
lucky
I'm
you.
there. I'm calling you from the island, and so now I'm just
Wow,
with my bare feet. I just touched the ground. Spent some
that's
time
lovely.
grounding today, and
Nice. Well done. Sounds
yeah,
very nice. Yeah, I've got bare feet as well. And after this, I'll go off into our garden, which is, quite wild actually, 3 acres of quite wild land.
Wow.
We have a wild stream and a bit of ancient woodland, so I'll spend some time there today after this.
The that actually something I wanted to ask you as well. The video you did with Sam
Yeah,
about learning to value, was that recorded near or at your
on
at
our
these
land.
gardens? Yeah.
Yes, it was. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, it looks incredible.
It is rather nice. Yeah, it is very beautiful. We're very lucky. Yeah, it's very beautiful. Yeah, really is.
So basically, for our listeners, or I would be curious to have you share some of your context that we need to basically understand before we dive deeper into the topics of Gaia, of basically the interconnectedness of all things, and how we as a species, I suppose, get also, I have a lot of young listeners with me, and so what we as young people can learn and have to understand about where we are currently as humanity, and also in our relationship to nature. So I would just have you, just share a little bit about your personal journey and context, and how you got to the place where you are right now.
Okay. Well, I suppose the first thing to say is that since I was very, very young, I mean, a baby, well, not a baby, but say 3 years old, I've had this tremendous love of the natural world, flowers, animals, but mostly wild animals. I like domestic animals too, but mostly wild living beings. And I also have a scientific cast of mind, and so from an early age, I went into science at school. Although for a while I was doing humanities and languages as well, but then we have to specialize, around 15 or 16. So I went into zoology, physics, and chemistry. Then I went to university and studied zoology. And then after that, I went to Oxford and did a doctorate in ecology. So I would say I've done scientific work, postdoctoral work as well. So I've done, my science is ecology, and I've been involved with ecology for quite a while now. But the thing is, you see, I did all that science, but I found there was something very seriously missing for me in science. And I didn't know what it was for a while. I just felt it was terribly dry, very dry, just all about fact, fact, fact. There was no soul in it. That's what I realise now. There was sort of no soul. Around about the time I was about maybe 20, I discovered Jung, Hermann Hesse, Jung, and I felt very much at home with those folks. Even though Jung seemed to be so astonishingly connected to an incredibly rich inner life, which I wished I had, but I didn't. But it's what I was yearning for, and Jung has been my companion all my life, really. And then, of course, later on, actually, whilst I was at Oxford, I got involved. I was part of a Tibetan Buddhist meditation group, and I met through them. I met some really wonderful lamas. I spent some time in Nepal, and living in a monastery with Trangpa Rinpoche, a really great lama who died just recently at a very old age. He was great, really great lama, one of the great Tibetan lamas, no question about it. And so then you see, I had this sort of yearning to unite the science with soul. And I didn't know how to do it, so I left mainstream science behind because I found it very soulless. Even though I was doing research in Costa Rica, I was teaching in Costa Rica for a few years, and my colleagues, were all very keen on nature, like I was, but there was a very quantitative approach, although a deep love of nature as well, of course. I mean, but there was no explicit cultivation of one's ability to connect with the soul of nature as a scientist, to make the science better. There's no one I could talk to, there's no one I could share that with, that sort of desire, you know.
Yeah.
Then whilst I was in Costa Rica, this was after my doctorate at Oxford, I read a book on conservation biology, and in the back of that book there was an article by a Norwegian professor called Arne Næss, who I'd never heard of, you know. And so I wrote to him, and his article was about how we value nature. In fact, it was about what he calls deep ecology.
Mm.
And that really spoke to me very profoundly. It was in the back of a scientific book on conservation biology, edited by Sule, I think. You know, his last article on sort of more philosophical aspects of connection with nature. I wrote him a letter, and he replied. Then I also wrote a letter to Satish Kumar, who at that point was running the small school in North Devon, which he'd founded. And I said to him, if ever I come back to England, could I come and teach in the small school? Because I was already feeling I had to leave mainstream science. Anyway, so I went to Nepal after that for 3 months, after Costa Rica, and spent time in the monastery, like I mentioned. Then I came back to Oxford, and thanks to a Tibetan Lama who came to visit, I drove the Lama, Ponlot Rinpoche, down to Devon to a Buddhist community, and there I heard they were looking for an ecologist at Schumacher College, they were just founding, it was just being started. In fact, it wasn't even called Schumacher College at that point. At Dartington, which is a very important place in English cultural life. I could tell you more about it. Anyway, so Satish was one of those people who was starting this new college for ecological studies to try and understand why our culture has been so destructive of nature and how we can cure that destructiveness. And they were looking for an ecologist, you know, because an ecological college, they had to have an ecologist. And I ran into them, and they interviewed me, and I spent a lot of time talking to them, and they gave me the job of being the first ecologist in residence. So is this okay, or am I speaking too much?
No, absolutely. Go ahead. Very
Okay,
interesting.
okay. So the first person to teach at this college, which they decided to call Schumacher College after E.F. Schumacher, you know, the Austrian economist,
Yeah.
you know, who wrote
Yes.
Small is Beautiful.
Yes.
Really important what he was very, very, very important. He saw through Schumacher the illusion of our modern economic system, which is based on perpetual growth of material throughput from the body of the planet into our artifacts. And he realized this was absolute suicide. So he wrote this book. Well, he wrote a lot of essays. They were collected into a book called Small is Beautiful. Economics as if people mattered, or something like that, you know. So I was delighted that the college was named after him. It was really, really good choice. Anyway, the first person to teach a course at Schumacher College I couldn't believe this, was none other than James Lovelock.
Yes. It's incredible.
I mean, he was a friend of Satish, you see. Then I realized the caliber of this college. It was a small college in southwest England, but yet it had the power to attract some of the greatest minds and thinkers, activists, students in the green movement from all over the world. I mean, Schumacher College is, since 1990, January 1991, in fact, was the first course. It's an absolutely remarkable place. A real light in the darkness of modern times, I would say. Anyway, so James Lovelock was the first teacher, and it was at a time when his Gaia hypothesis, or Gaia theory, was still having a lot of trouble in mainstream science, particularly from the neo-Darwinist biologists.
Yeah.
And he was delighted to meet someone like me, who was a bit uncomfortable with neo-Darwinism, and, you know, had done field work in Costa Rica, and also I was a muddy boot ecologist, you know, really in the field. And he was a great instrument inventor, so we kind of related on that level. We went for long walks on the estate and we talked about Gaia. We became very good friends. It was lovely. And then I realized that my job at the college should be to teach Gaia. So I went to see him at his house on the Cornwall-Devon border, where he had a laboratory, and I spent a lot of time with him. And he and I started collaborating on some of his science, a mathematical model of Gaia called Daisy World, the very first mathematical model of Gaia, which he created. And I helped him with that. We worked that together for 5 years, published a couple of papers, and we were friends until he passed away last year.
Yes.
And then Arnie Ness came soon after, and I met him and became great friends with him, and many other great teachers. You know, a whole list of great, and not only teachers but also participants from around the world. And then, just to finish, one of those teachers was a biologist called Brian Goodwin.
Mm-hmm.
He was professor of biology at the Open University, and when he retired, he wanted to have a place. He wanted to start a master's degree in a kind of science I was interested in, you know, more soulful science, which actually brought Goethe in. You know, Goethe, your Goethe, Wolfgang von Goethe. You haven't heard of Goethe? No. Wow.
Maybe I don't have the maybe I don't have the
G-O-E. He's like the German Shakespeare.
Can you spell it?
Yeah, Goethe. Wolfgang von Goethe.
Okay, of course. Sorry, yeah.
How do you say it then? How do you say Goethe in German?
Goethe.
Really?
Yeah.
Goethe.
Mm.
Have I got it right? Goethe.
Yeah, nearly. Yeah, you
nearly.
Close. Very good.
Goodness gracious. No wonder. So I should, well, in English we call him Goethe, but I'm going to try and call him Goethe.
Yeah.
Goethe.
Exactly. That's how you
Goethe.
Yeah.
Like that? Goethe. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Goethe. Okay. Anyway, so Brian Goodwin was delighted when he came to the college. He felt this was the place where he could unite his mathematical biology and developmental biology and physics and chemistry with the approach of Goethe, which is to do with the soul, with the soulful attitude to nature, you know, with the soulful connection with plants. So plants speak to you in a personal kind of way about their inner life, about their soul. That's complete nonsense according to mainstream science.
Yes.
Plants don't have souls, they're just mechanisms, you know. This is what turned me off. And so Brian Goodwin was very eminent. I mean, he was one of the world's top biologists. He wasn't just any old biologist. He was exceptional, you know, and a lovely person. And so I helped him put together this master's degree, which we taught for 20 years here at the college with students from all over the world. It was an amazing experience. So, well, let's see. Is that enough, or shall I say a little bit more?
No, I would be curious to because like it's just fascinating. Honestly, I really gotta say, what a life! How interesting. Also, that you were born in Venezuela, I think.
Yes. Oh, that was amazing to be born in Venezuela. That was big blessing number one.
Why is that?
Really? Because in 1953, the Amazon was virtually untouched. The mountains around Caracas were full of forest, and there were probably jaguars walking around in there. The old Spanish buildings of Caracas most of them, a lot had been demolished, but a lot hadn't, you know. And it was a very good time. It was very calm. There was, of course, the weather in Caracas was then absolutely perfect. They said it was the city of perpetual spring, you know. And there were orchids and birds and butterflies, and then the ocean not far away was absolutely incredible. So I think I absorbed all of that, you know, into my soul. And I still feel very, 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 very deeply connected to the South American and Central America. Very deep. And Spanish is my first language. I speak fluent Spanish still. And I play some Venezuelan music, which I learned when I was a young scientist. Yeah, on the joropo rhythm. From the music in Venezuela is fantastic, really. So, but also I feel I've absorbed the indigenous wisdom from the Amazon in some kind of way, from the Yanomami people. You know, somehow it's part of me. It's part of me. It's a alternative worldview, a very deep ecological worldview, a very Gaian worldview. And when I was 21, I went back to Venezuela because we came from Venezuela when I was 6 to England.
Yes.
I went back to Venezuela when I was 21, and I lived there and in Colombia for 3 years. And I spent a lot of time in very wild places, forests and things, and absorbed so much from that place. So it's very important. Venezuela, South America, very important for me. Yeah, I wouldn't.
Ah.
It's very important. I wouldn't have this extra dimension if I hadn't been born there. I'm quite sure.
That was actually what I was just sensing. I was feeling, and I was wondering while you were sharing what you shared about your personal path, especially when it comes to science, because I receive it and I perceive it very much the same way. I wanted to get involved in even in philosophy, in university, and even that for me was so cognitive, so much up in the head, so far
Yeah.
away from feeling, from my intuition, from what it is actually to be in touch with what all of those great thinkers are in essence talking about.
Hmm.
Like and investigating the self and going deeper within and coming up with all of those models. But for me, it was so unbelievably draining to read those texts because it was so complicated because it had to go through the filter of language and
Hmm.
cognition, and therefore
Right.
also intellect is something that was somehow in the way because I just realized my intellectual capabilities and capacity are sometimes not even sufficient for some of those great thinkers, and therefore I couldn't get, or it took me just ages to read through one page,
Yeah. I know.
of
Never
those
ever.
texts, and therefore I was just wondering, or that came to me, where your hunger or and intuitive drive towards the soul behind nature in that case, and our planet and the interconnectedness of all things, and not things but beings, was coming from. Because when I look at your trajectory in your life, I feel like you you needed to be quiet. Like this is an assumption, and I would be curious to hear what you say about it. But I guess there was you were met with some resistance along the way, from people who, yeah, like you say, didn't resonate at all with what you were saying and what kind of direction you wanted to go in. So your desire to find out more and to find like-minded people such as James Lovelock, then at the end of the day, was, you had to persevere. You had to really have this deeply rooted, you know
That's nice of you to say so. Thank you. Because
so
sometimes,
yeah,
yeah. So your question is, what kept me going through all that? You mean?
exactly, yeah.
I can't really say. It was. I think you could say it was my daimon. There's something deep within, or the self,
Mm-hmm.
something deep within me. And then, of course, with Jung, I realized we had to pay attention to dreams.
Hmm.
So I paid real attention when I was young. And of course, I got lost. I lost because it hasn't been an easy path, put it like that. And there has been resistance, yes, definitely. So what kept me going, I think, was a trust that something very deep inside myself knew what it wanted me to do, to be in service to it,
Hmm.
something like that. And that it, I don't even like the word it, you see, because that word it is quite rude, insulting
Yes.
about this thing. What is this thing? It's a mystery. But all I know is that when we are in touch with that in ourselves, we're safe. And when we're not, we're lost. I know in Jungian psychology, he calls it the self. That's why I like Jungian psychology, even though you can dispute the terminology. There's something within it. I mean, daimon, Hermann Hesse writes about this all the time, and all his stories are about. there's something every human being has, which is something they're meant to be. And often what that is goes against the norms of society, quite often. And so the way the only route to have a sort of happiness is to be in service to that daimon in yourself. And one way it speaks to you, to us, is through our dreams, although they're often very difficult to understand, But I had certain dreams that were very clear about what I should do
How
at
did that
times.
look
So
like?
well, after my first degree at Durham University, where I studied zoology, I wasn't happy there at all.
Right.
I really felt the soullessness of it, but I didn't know why. I'd come back from 6 months in the African bush, in the wild, very, very wild place, a paradise, helping on scientific work of various kinds on warthogs and elephants. And
Wow.
I went straight to Durham, and I remember my first day on the campus. The buildings were so square, and everything was so concreted, everything, and the soul just drained out of me. Everything I'd found in the African bush, that wildness, that soulful, that richness, just left me for 3 years. And so I wasn't happy, and I didn't like the ecology classes. So I left and I went to Venezuela, and I got rather lost then. And so I had a dream.
Mm-hmm.
2 dreams, but the main dream was that there was this chessboard of light green and dark green squares, and on the chessboard there was one piece, and that piece was my ecology tutor at Durham, who actually is still alive. He's a great ecologist, but I didn't get on with him at all. I didn't like his approach. It just seemed so dry and now I would say, well, I wouldn't say soulless, because everyone has a soul, but it was too dry. It didn't satisfy something deep. And so in the dream, the hand of some big hand, maybe the hand of the divine, had picked me up on this chessboard and put me on the square right next to him. And I said to this hand, why have you put me here next to him? I can't stand him. And the answer came from somewhere, for your better understanding. So then I realized I had to go get back into scientific ecology.
Oh, wow.
And so then that path took me to Oxford, you see. I mean, I couldn't believe I was at Oxford, because it really is still, it was then, it still is one of the most wonderful zoology departments in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that's what I mean. I think dreams can help us to find that path. But it's also things happen in your life, synchronicities happen. You meet someone, you read a book, and it sort of guides you. That's what's happened with me. I also, that feeling of have to go to Nepal to be immersed in the Tibetan Buddhist attitude to things. That was a very strong urge in me. And I gave up my job in Costa Rica at the university. Could have spent the rest of my life there. But this urge was so strong, I gave up my job and I went to Nepal, and I did that, you see. So somehow, it's almost sometimes I felt that there's this something pulling me, and it's so strong I can't resist it.
Wow.
Also, when you're young, when you're in your 30s, you don't think about logistics or, the implications, financial implications, you just do it.
Wow. Yeah. Well, Stephan, I'm there. It's funny that there's a lot of things where I can see myself, because I literally last year I decided to give it all up and move to a Zen Buddhist monastery in the Black Forest in Germany. So I went there, and just like you say, logistics were not an issue. Like I was just I didn't have I didn't own any furniture or anything. I just had my suitcase and some clothes, and so I just packed my car and drove down,
Good for
and
you.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and I studied with the monks and got acquainted with Zen Buddhism, and yeah, just like because I had been meditating for while, years, and but I was somehow looking for guidance and just to deepen my practice, and so I wanted to spend time some at a place where, and this is also what I've learned from that time, is that everything was facilitated in a way that helps you to look inside, and
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
from the architecture, from how the whole
Uh-huh.
place is set up, everything is so intentional, everything is
Uh-huh.
so yeah, just really
That's nice.
intentionally built,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
engineered in a way that there's no resistance even for the eye. Everything is just clean, Japanese,
Uh-huh.
very
Oh, I
minimalistic,
know.
and
I love Japanese aesthetic, the traditional. It's beautiful.
yeah.
Really. Yeah, I love it too. Beautiful, beautiful.
So
Really beautiful.
I'm so much resonating with what you're sharing, and yeah, if you were to ask me what drove me and what still does now, I can't even tell you. It's this hunger, it's this also,
Yeah.
and this is also something that I wanted to talk to you about. Like you said in the documentary, or like in that video, learning to value, you said feeling is another way of knowing, and
Yeah.
I so much resonate with that because we somehow in our society today, and especially in Western society, I feel that we put cognition and thinking on a pedestal,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
it's superior to all other forms of
Yeah.
existing, and so I would be curious to explore a little bit with you how you distinct, and where you the differentiation of the different forms of knowing,
Yeah.
what they are for you and what you found
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. That's great. And I mean, I'd like to know more what you found out in the Zen monastery.
Mm.
But anyway, I would like to know. Is it very important? Okay. Well, for me, I think basically I'm a thinking type, although not particularly good at it. Sort of average. definitely, definitely a thinking type. I'm afraid to say. Well, no, it's not afraid. That's what I am. I am. So I've had to work to find work to cultivate my opposite function, which is feeling. And this is where Goethe has been very helpful to me, and Jung, and all these, and Hesse, and all these other folks. They're about feeling primarily. So for example, when I see a flower, when I go to a flower now, let's say I go to a flower. In the old days, when I was, still in the university, at both universities, Durham and Oxford, there'd be this sort of inner pressure from the conditioning, which would say to me, this is a machine. This is a bunch of genes that have created this flower as a kind of robot, so those genes can spread themselves into the into future generations of this species of plant, and those genes are entirely selfish. They don't give a damn about anything else other than getting themselves spread out and getting more of their copies of themselves into the environment. That's what it's all about.
Mm.
That was very, and then there'd be another part of me who would say, "Hang on, wait a minute, but this can't be what the flower is. This just can't be right. I mean, it can't be the whole story. I mean, it's probably partly right, but then what else is there? Where can?" And I look at the flower, and I knew there was more, but I couldn't find it because I suppose because the conditioning was so strong, that I struggled to find it. Now it's different, you see. After all this time, now I go to the flower, and it sounds so flaky. That's the problem. from my thinking mind now goes, oh my God, what are you doing? This is so flaky. But because I go to the flower and I say, hello, hello, what a beautiful flower you are. Look at you. Look at you. There's the leaves and the beautiful color of the flower. God, you really are a very fine and beautiful being. And the thinking mind says, oh, okay, yeah, this makes me feel happy as well. All right, makes me feel happy. We can still have genes and all that, population dynamics models and whatever, all the mathematical model, whatever you like. Still, it's no problem. There's no conflict. You just carry on. Yeah, it's fine. In fact, what you find, the thinking mind will say to me now, what you find when you relate to the plant like a person, like a friend, this will really enhance my intellectual understanding of nature. It really will. It really will. So I want you to do it, says my thinking mind now. I want you to do it. So I sit with the plant, and then I go with Gaia. I start from the base of the plant near the ground, and I look at the way the first leaf is, and the second leaf as it goes. I look at the leaves, really connect with the shape, the whole texture. It's a very sensory experience, you see. Then you bring the senses in.
Yes.
Very sensory. You really sensual. You feel the leaves, feel the little hairs on the leaves, the colours, the smell, everything you sense. And go up Goethe was very systematic, Goethe. So he'd say, go up the stem with each leaf and see how it changes as you go up the stem. Really take that in, because this is the plant speaking to you about itself. The way the plant, the being of the plant is changing its leaves as it goes up the stem, that's the plant telling you about itself. And itself, of course, is nature. So you're not just learning about the plant, you're learning about the whole of nature, about the soul, the anima mundi, the soul of nature. And then you get to the extraordinary. I never forget one time I was working with Herb Robert, a little English plant, which you probably have in Germany. I got as far as the flower. I spent maybe half an hour with the leaves, and I got to the flower, and then the explosion of the flower as a completely different expression of this same being that had made the leaves. Now, this same being had made itself into this extraordinary, beautiful little flower. How do you get from the leaf to the flower? Suddenly, the same being has flowered. Wow. And then, of course, there's a flowering in oneself. Some kind of flowering happens. It's very hard to describe. That's all I would say. That flowering then becomes an intuition. Maybe, possibly, yeah, an intuition of the inner. Well, now it gets a bit intellectual, but the inner being of the plant. It's something like that. That's what's happened with me. Mind you, I wish I could have that all the time. Sometimes I can't do it.
Yeah.
But I've reached the point that even those days when I'm not able to do that to the max, I still greet the flowers and the trees, and I'm not afraid to hug a tree now. It's a wonderful thing to do, actually.
Yeah,
I mean, the people who dislike what we do so much, they call us tree huggers. Yes, I'm hugging I have a wonderful tree in our wild garden. Oh, it's an amazing experience to hug the tree, because the sense of solidity and confidence and strength that you find when you do that is very good for your soul.
yeah.
Very good. The tree is feeding your soul, giving you courage to face life, and the difficulties in life. Anyway, I've probably said too much, haven't I?
No, you haven't. You have not. And it brought up something because you were curious about the Zen Buddhist monastery.
Oh
So,
yeah, tell me what. Yeah, well, I know it's hard to describe, but what did you find? Can you tell me?
well, it's funny, or it's not. It's synchronistically again, because very similar things to what you just shared.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, yes, because actually it's actually very funny, because one of the first, let's say, exercises or things that we did to was to go out into on the grounds of the monastery, and we were led by the roshi, the master and
Yeah.
the head of the monastery. And so
Yeah.
basically
Uh-huh.
we should go out, and we should pick any sort of plant or tree or something that strikes us in nature, and we should spend 10 minutes with it, and we should just be with it, and after that we should come together and share what we
Oh,
found.
wonderful. That's fantastic.
And one a friend of mine, now it's a friend, so somebody who was there, he basically walked around the grounds, and he basically, everybody already went to the beautiful flowers, so the beautiful,
Uh,
the
uh,
blooming, and the rose
right.
bushes, and the peach trees, and everything. And so
Yeah.
he ended up basically going to the compost
Oh,
section.
good for him. That's
Yeah.
excellent.
So
Uh-huh.
he went there, and then he was like, right, well, the thinking mind basically starts already rambling on why why that he ended up here now, and that he has to spend like 10 long minutes with this pile of compost, but he just said, all right, well, I'm here to maybe also let go of the thinking mind a little bit, so I'm just gonna see what's arising in the moment. And so he was just
Uh-huh.
observing that pile of compost very closely, and he basically, what he shared afterwards was that he started to see a whole ecosystem. He saw
Oh, good.
a whole world taking place there, a whole in exchange of ants, walking around, and um, moving certain, basically like little tiny chunks of apples, and leftovers from one place to another. And then there was other insects coming, and then there was the earth through the wind slightly moving, and blowing across the pile, and it was just like a living organism. It was a whole um, yeah, it was a cohesive system, just like, yeah, living and breathing. And he was absolutely fascinated, and afterwards he basically said, you can you guys can spend like more time with your bushes, because like I want to be at the compost, that's where I want to be. And so it just basically, and that was the first day. It just tuned me into the nuances and and the depth of ordinary, quote unquote, happenings and experiences that we have every single day, because we are so overstimulated. And within, a couple of days in the monastery, obviously I completely looked inward and was able to slow down the outside noise, like I said, because everything is set up in a way that helps with that process. And so I had deep moments of, so far, the deepest moments of meditation, where, in my opinion, when I'm hearing Zen, I'm now I now connected with a feeling. I now connected with an experience that I had, which is just like a deeply rooted security and tranquility and safety within me, because I know that once I get still enough, I I am whole. I am safe. I am connected, and I just also there's like I sensed this sort of this. I really investigated the drop into the body, because I was so deep in meditation that I was feeling basically transcending the personal self and the body to a more universal place. And then again, I the drop into the self again. So this sort of back and forth, this walk on this thin wire, of that we are all walking on, basically, when looking into consciousness more, is that sort of awakened dream state. Sometimes we are more in flesh and bone and in this sensory suit of ours, and we are very connected and present with it. And sometimes we are more in a more lucid state. And this sort of duality just basically made my ordinary everyday experience just much richer. Yeah. So that's yeah.
Thank you very much, Maxi. That's really good to hear that. Thank you it's very helpful. Thank you. That's really helpful. Yeah, I know what you mean. I think, I experience it. I've got more turbulence in my psyche, so it's not so easy for me often to find that. But I know what you mean. So it's wonderful. You're very blessed. You're blessed to be able to do that.
Well, yeah, thank you. And let me share one more thing. I did a very deep breath work session, and I discovered breath work as a very powerful tool, just a breath in general, to connect to just my essence, because it gets you literally out of the head very fast and efficient. And basically, after I did one of those very beautiful guided transcendental breathwork sessions, which was guided and led, and basically the person who does it, in my opinion, is somebody who has really understood and embodied this sort of deeper place within and is living from that. And so he guided us through this deeper understanding into consciousness and the interconnectedness to Mother Nature and to nature in general, and that there is in that case no duality. There is no it and I. It is just we or I as one coherent, cohesive thing. And so basically, being. And so after that, the day after, I took a walk in the morning. I got up very early and I went for a walk in the park. And Stephan, I'm telling you, it was one of the deepest spiritual experiences I've ever had. I don't know, and I didn't take any substances or anything. I was literally just high on life. It was so beautiful. I just saw nature. How can I describe it? As something that, or this beautiful, I just saw the mother, and with every tree that was coming out of the earth, I was just feeling that I was so sorry. I was feeling so sorry that how we treated her and how we still treat her. And I was just I was touching a leaf, and I was crying so much, and I was just I'm so sorry how we treated you and how we still do, and how beautifully you are emerging everywhere around us, and how the gifts that you share with us, and the beauty and the absolute perfection of how everything is coming together. It's just, oh my God, I was so moved by it. And the next day I took a walk. It was a whole different experience, and I just still see nature as like a beautiful scenery or whatever. But this moment was different, and I have deep reverence for that, and it is now a goal of mine to, yeah, you know, that's again the monkey mind, to recreate that feeling. But I felt it once. Yes.
Yeah, good. See, that's what I call being Gaia'd.
Mm. Yeah, talk to us
Yeah.
more about that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I needn't say any more than what you just said. That was perfect. It's. I mean, you expressed it beautifully. What more can I add? My friend David Abraham, the great American philosopher, he says that when these things happen to us, we're in the presence of the real. So I like that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
See, there's a real feeling of reality to it, isn't it?
Yes.
You know, that we've really come home. This is what's true. This is the truth, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's that feeling of that this is the truth, or this is truth, or I am in truth, or truth has come to me, or of course you can't say truth in the normal intellectual sense of, you know, logically consistent statements about something. Although you can, I mean, that's what Spinoza did. He wrote all this down, the same experience down, as a whole set of logical statements. I find it impossible to read Spinoza for the same reasons you had with problems with philosophy, the same. But if my friend Arnie Ness tells me Spinoza was talking about that, then I know Spinoza's,
Right.
you know. So anyway, back to it's good to mention Spinoza, I think, in relation to this experience. He felt it very, very, very strongly. He was devoted to it for the whole of his life. And I think you're right. It's what our life is about. If there's there's only one thing worth finding in life, and it's that experience. Nothing
Yes.
else is worth it.
Mm.
Although there are, you know, so of course one can find it in many different ways. But that's one. The relation with nature, with Gaia, is absolutely hugely important now.
Yes.
More and more of us have got to have that experience for the. I'm glad you say about breath work, because I use breath to calm myself, and I know someone who's used breath work to find that state. So I'm going to, if you can later on recommend me the teacher, if they
Yeah.
maybe I could join. But I'm going to explore breath work more because I think it could help. But anyway, back to the experience. I have that experience quite a lot, you know, myself.
Wow.
When I'm in the wood, that little wood that you saw in the film,
Yes.
you know, I've got a wonderful place to sit there, I tell you. I mean, it's overlooking the stream, and it's wild. It's amazing. It's a patch of British English or Northern European deciduous forest, which
Mm.
is, I think, having seen many forests around the world, it's one of the most delicately beautiful forests, and it's in our garden. And it's wild. I sit there, I look at, just like you had, that same experience you had, you know, the tangled branches, everything has made itself from itself. Well, no, it hasn't been interfered with maybe for 100 years. And it's all pretty much native species, you know, European species. And I get the same feeling you've just described. You know, I weep because I think, how can people cut down places like this as so obviously gorgeously beautiful?
Yeah.
I mean, dripping with soul and I mean the intelligence or the purposefulness that's made the complexities in the forest. You know, just, but as you say, it's completely coherent. You know, it all hangs together. It's a beautiful scene. Everything's everywhere you look is just beautiful. You can hold your eyes on this little scene, the way that through the trees you see more distant trees, and those trees are in the sunlight. You can hold your eyes there for a long time, just appreciating how amazingly beautiful that is. And then
Absolutely.
you shift your gaze, and then suddenly there are leaves in front of you, and the twigs, the branches, are very slender hazel branches, are bending in such a way as to create a kind of doorway for you to look through. I mean, it's just like everywhere you look, it's like that.
Absolutely.
Um,
What do you what do you, what do, what would you share with our listeners is one of the, for you, a vision, a, yeah, a quest, something that we, like I said in the beginning, with also younger people, what do you feel like our world could look like? What changes does that come with if more people were to experience something like that?
Oh, I mean, the world would be over. If imagine if everyone on the planet overnight, I often say, I think I said that in the film with Sam, woke up and had the experience we're talking about,
Hmm.
which is, I think, the human right of every human being. Every human being is born with that, you know.
Yeah.
So imagine, wow. I mean, I think it would take maybe 50 years to dismantle some of the most destructive activities that we're doing. If everyone's had that experience, people would be working in certain business operations, you know, and they'd suddenly realize, oh my God, we can't. Everyone in the business realized, we got to stop doing this right now. This is really damaging. So let's use all the money we've got to create or to do what we're doing, but in a very Gaia-friendly way. Or if
Mm-hmm.
we can't do it, we dissolve ourselves and we give away the money and we support small enterprises that can do this. So I think probably it would be a world with much more, a huge amount of wild nature. Everyone would look out of their window wherever they're living and they would see some wild nature. If it's in a city, it would be a little corridor of wild nature. They could, nice big wide corridor, maybe a kilometer, half a kilometer going through the city. And people could go into that. They could put their young people, you know, you put your backpack on, you get ready for a whole week or 2 weeks. You go into the patch, and that takes you out of the city and into real big wild nature, where you can camp and meditate and really feel the healthiness, the health of Gaia.
Mm.
And that would be, I would say, on a landscape level, just talking about landscape, that's what the landscape would be like everywhere. And then, of
What is
course,
your relationship with cities in general?
oh, well, I mean, the city, I love the city is very important as a center of culture, you know, and connection and conversation and different parts, people from different parts of the world can come and share different music, different food, different culture, different spirituality, different spiritual, you know, practices. That's what a city should be. But
Mm-hmm.
it has to be very small and very beautiful. It has to be beautiful. Like your Zen monastery, you know, everything was designed to facilitate that deep experience. A city should be the same. I mean, there are models. There's in many European cities, the old parts are so beautiful, you know.
Yes.
I could mention several. I'm sure you have them in Germany as well. We have them in England. Anyway, so that's what the city should be like. No more of this brutalist architecture. None, that's gone, you know. I think we demolish most of that. Maybe we'd keep some of it as a sort of monument to how crazy we can get. But also, you know, we shouldn't be too absolutist because some people love that kind. Some people find soul in those buildings. So okay, we leave. If people really find, I can't find any soul, but I know some people do. So we don't. We leave some. We have a whole district like that for people who find real soul in it.
Mm.
Some people do, right? So you see, so it's very pluralistic. That's the other thing. All my business of blowing up those buildings, that's no good. That's not. You see, that's not open-minded enough.
Yes.
We have to accept there are so many different kinds of people, but everybody, I think, everybody has Gaia in their soul. Put it like that. If we call that experience Gaia that
Mm-hmm.
you were describing, that I was describing, let's call it Gaia.
How do
Then
you,
everyone,
also
yeah.
with teaching, with you teaching, like, do you, is there like practices you recommend and you are guiding people through with connecting
Yes,
to
yes,
Gaia?
yes, there are. Yeah. Mind you, I think what you said about breath work can be included in this, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very important, but it has to be carefully guided. So anyway, I have some practices. Yeah, one of them I would say is the deep time walk.
Okay.
So on the deep time walk, it's a kind of walking meditation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're familiar with walking meditation,
Yes.
right?
Yes, absolutely.
And this deep time walk. I'm so pleased about this. I tell you, it's one of the best things I've heard in my career, if you like. It's been done by the monks and nuns at Plum Village.
Right.
That makes me feel really good. So anyway, imagine we're in your monastery, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to do a deep time walk.
Okay.
So we choose a route that's 4.6 kilometers long, but all through nature, all through the forest. Or they can do in the city as well. But we're in your monastery, so presumably there's mountain or forest or
Yes. Yes.
4.6 kilometers, right? And that 4.6 kilometers represents the story of our Earth, how she's developed from her birth until today. Over 4,600 million years. 4,600 million years. That's how old she is. 4,600 million. Amazingly old. My God. And we're going to connect with that age and also her development, as we know it from the science. See, this is where science comes in. We know from our science. No other culture has ever known this, what we know, about how old she is, what happened. So we're going to walk that story over 4.6 kilometers. Therefore, every meter we walk is 1 million years of her history, of her story, of our mother's story. 1 million years. Every footstep is 500,000 years, 500,000 years. Every footstep is 500,000 years. And every millimeter is 1,000 years. You see, already, don't you find, already we're moving in the direction of that experience, Gaia
Yeah.
experience. Already, right? Just even with that information, already. And then we walk, and then I say, you know, I tell the story as we go along from the science, what the supernova explosion a little further back, and then the Earth is a molten ball of rock around the newly born sun, and then the first appearance of the water, then, you know, the crust cooling, this molten ball of rock cooling, then the first life, the first living being, something like a bacterium, but much more primitive, who is the ancestor of all life. That's the incredible thing. This little population, I imagine this little population of cells, very primitive, primordial cells that were there probably in a hydrothermal vent at the bottom of the ocean. You know, it's got all these amino acids, carbohydrates, fats, nucleotides. They somehow organize themselves into the miracle of a living cell. I mean, incredible. Something like 3,500 million years ago. And those cells are the ancestors of all living beings, all of us, trees, animals, you know, bacteria, fungi, all from that one ancestor. And we really take that on board, you know, when we're there. In fact, I break out a bottle of illusory champagne, which I hide behind a tree, and we all have, it's not really there, you know, and we all share this champagne with invisible champagne glasses, like that, you know. And then we go on, and I won't go to the whole story. The point is that the multicellular world that we're so familiar with land plants, that only really starts very close to the end. And most of the time it's unicellular organisms in the ocean, mostly in the ocean, and nothing on the continent. And then suddenly, bang, there's this explosion about, say, 450 million years, 450 meters before the end. There's this explosion of life on the land. It starts developing. The land plants are little mosses to begin with, and they soon develop into trees with wood, and then the fish, some of them come out of the water and they develop into amphibians, then to reptiles, then to birds, then to mammals. The insects go crazy producing, I mean, a huge blossoming of creativity on the land surface.
Absolutely.
And then, you know, the diversity, there are mass extinctions, of course, sometimes it crashes, but we get to the present, we get to 200 years ago, Industrial Revolution, when the whole thing is just beautiful. The whole of Gaia is just so still pretty perfect state. Lots of wild places, lots of really regulating very well. You know, doing well.
Yeah.
And then we start destroying her 200 years ago, and that happens, and then the climate starts warming. The CO2 input into the atmosphere is probably the fastest it's ever been in the whole story of Gaia, and over the whole 4,600 million years. I think it's, from what I know of the science, it's the fastest increase of CO2 the planet's ever seen. It's really scarily fast. From burning fossil fuels and destroying biodiversity, and then that's all happening in the last 1/5 of a millimeter.
Yeah.
And then we get to now, and we think, crikey, that's all that destruction after all that time of development and crises. Of course, there have always been crises. We get to this crisis, which we have created, not an asteroid like the last one, big extinction, which happened when an asteroid, maybe 7 kilometers across, that lump of rock crashed into the Yucatan, and set in train massive global climate changes that wiped out the dinosaurs. That asteroid didn't know what it was doing.
Yes.
We know we're different. We're worse. We're as bad as the asteroid, not worse. But we know what we're doing. And so all that kind of sinks in right at the end, And we stand together at the end, and we just share what we've experienced together. And everybody feels deeply something. They've learned something very deep from Gaia herself. And then we all inwardly make a promise to do something in our life, small or big, for her, which is also, of course, for humanity, because we are Gaia. And for her, I mean, for that experience we both described, So that may become a reality with humans involved in Gaia in that way. Through everyone experiencing that as their fundamental connection with the whole of life, then we'll be able to make a Gaia society. So that's one practice I have, the deep time walk.
Absolutely beautiful. So powerful. Undeniably connecting to where we are coming from. You just know and you feel it, and you can just shake your head, and
Yeah, it's amazing.
Just like I saw another little I don't even know where I saw it, but I think also just like a little video I saw or something. Basically, this guy just sharing, like we as Westerners in today, we are growing up, people reaching 30, 40, 50 years old. No, yeah, let's say 40 years old, being basically, run through the system of education, university, then the workplace, and just to never have touched consciously, Mother Earth with, their bare feet consciously, connecting, just the the basics, really the basics, or having hugged a tree once, having it's actually also hugging a tree is another story that because I used to live close to Berlin in Potsdam. It's a very beautiful place, and a friend of mine was studying a lot of German history, and he because we were walking the grounds and we were walking the parks, and the trees there, Stephan, are unbelievable. Really, they are hundreds and hundreds of years old, and they are just, they've seen, Hitler and everything that he did, and everything that came before and everything that came after, and so, but they are just still standing. And so we were really like talking and sharing about, what all of that story did for Germany and the trauma that it caused. And at the same time, he was just like talking about an experience that he had with when he was visiting Auschwitz, when he was coming out of the gas chambers, and he just saw a woman coming out, and the only and first thing that she did was she came out and she just straight walked to a tree and she just hugged the tree. Yeah, that's all that she could do in that moment.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
It's all
That proves
yeah,
that proves the point, doesn't it?
absolutely.
You know, you've been murdered in a gas chamber, and somehow your ghost is still alive, and your friend shows up, and somehow, because his attitude opens that possibility to her, and the first thing she does is go to the tree, and then she's okay. After all that, all that horrible, she's okay because of hugging the tree.
Yeah.
She's found that reality, Gaia, and then she can release, go wherever we don't know what happens there. But I mean, it brings us to the deep question of death. I think we somehow, when we die, we go back to that experience in some way.
Yeah.
But in a very, I don't know. I like to think it's very pure and clean, so without all the psychological. I'm just speaking of myself now. Psychological difficulties one has, which get in the way of it.
Yeah. It's also very Zen, the simplicity. The deep learning that I extracted from that time was, whenever life and the human experience gets somewhat complicated, I'm getting suspicious. I'm getting a little bit worried, because all of those very deep experiences I had and deep insights into the human experience were very intuitive, were very simple, were very straightforward to the core. There was not a lot of, also when it comes to decisions in my life and stuff, when it gets complicated, I know that I need to slow down. I need to reconnect. I need to remove things and people, places, and circus. I need to return to myself. And then less is more. Yeah.
Well done. That's really good that you've found that already. You're still very young. That's pretty fantastic. I wish I'd found that when I was your age. I'd be much happier now if I had.
Thank you. Well, yeah. And still
That's terrific.
Still I'm not always happy, but yeah.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's possible to be always happy in some way. I mean, I saw it with Trungpa Rinpoche, who I mentioned. I mean, I'm not venerating a guru or anything like that. It's not like that at all. I just spent time, and he was so calm all the time. Extraordinary, really. He really was, and he was. Yeah, he was in that sort of place, I think, quite a. I mean, permanently, I would say. And he was very simple. Like you were saying, people told me he was one of the most learned lamas in the world. Trungpa Rinpoche, and I thought he was like a plumber, like a peasant. Honestly, I thought he was like a peasant. I really did. I thought he was like a yak herder. I never told him that, of course, but he used to smile at me all the time, like I would imagine a yak herder would smile at me. It was fantastic. It was incredible.
It's hilarious. You should have told him.
Well, he's passed away now, but anyway, I can tell him. I think he would be very happy with that. He used to call me Costa Rica. And we have, I mean, he was, and he gave me, oh, wow. I mean, I realize now what he gave me, you know.
What was that?
You know it very well. There's there's something for me, I mean, very, telling, really bearing my soul now, but why not, you know?
Yeah.
There's something for me about Tibetan Buddhism. I don't know what you take, but I think, I mean, it's just it's my thing, you know. I feel it's so sacred at the core, my God.
Mm.
So beautiful and sacred. And the practices, they work with the imagination. I think that's what I like. It started with Bun, you know, which was quite shamanic and all about nature spirits and all that kind of thing. Going in Tibet with mountains and that incredible wild nature they've had there, you know. And they really felt the nature spirits, the soul in nature, very strong, very strong. And then Buddhism comes and it just integrates integrates a new form of Burn, a new kind of Buddhism is a synthesis is created. It's extremely beautiful. In Tibetan Buddhism, you really have the spirits of nature. You have the unconscious. You have what Jung would call active imagination. You have that's beautiful. I just think it's fantastic.
Mm.
I love it. It's lovely. It's very different. I had some experience of Zen. And when I went on a retreat, I found that very, very difficult, I tell you.
Was that?
Oh, well, first of all, we're all in a dormitory, right?
Yeah.
And people were snoring all night long. And to go to the loo, you had to sort of step over a whole bunch of people in the dark. And I didn't sleep very well.
Oh, that's not. Oh, yeah, that's a
No,
tough
I
one.
couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. You know, I felt uptight. And then during the sessions, oh God, I suffered so much. I can't tell you. I was suffering the whole time. The only thing I really liked was at the end when the Hogan-san, the Zen priest, he banged the big sort of gong.
Yes.
Boom.
Yes.
I would wait for a whole day just to hear that sound. When I heard that sound, I was okay.
Yeah, I know yeah, Saved by the Bell. It's not only a saying in
You didn't
boxing.
have that experience. You just went straight into peace and calm. Amazing.
Well,
But it's very hard.
oh, well, Stephan, I also, oh God, I also had a lot of hours of pain and suffering in my
Yeah.
legs,
Yeah.
and
Did you? Oh
yeah,
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure,
Of course,
for
in the
sure.
legs.
Oh,
But in the psyche is the worst when you suffer. I suffered so much. The other thing I loved was the interview with the Roshi. He was Japanese Roshi.
mm,
That was nice. You know, I'd walk in beautifully arranged with, you know, rice paper screens, I think. It was beautifully done and lovely. And he's sitting there like this
yeah,
real Japanese person, you know, with his beautiful kimono, all Japanese traditional culture. Oh, wow, I really like that.
yeah,
That I really, that I love very much. And then he said, if you know, that he's wearing those sort of white socks on their feet with
yes,
the toes showing, you know, and so like really amazing. Hogan-san, uh, I just loved it. That was great. I don't even know what we talked about. We didn't even talk very much. I just sat in we just sat together, you know. And what would he say? He'd say, "Very good, very good, very good," something like that. Very good, good. Yeah, I wouldn't say anything to him. I'd just say he could. I don't know. We just knew what was going on, and he just said to me, "Good," and just keep going. But God, that was tough.
yeah. But that's the thing. Like, I did the same thing after a longer practice session, like a couple of days, a Sazen Kayat, which is like an intense retreat of 3 days, I think. Yeah, I think it was 3 days of
Wow.
intense meditation.
God.
So like 10 hours, 11 hours a day.
Oh,
You eat in the zendo, in the monastery, in the
do you?
meditation hall. You just
Oh,
basically leave only for to go to the toilet and to sleep. And so after that, all of the attendees have the opportunity to speak to the Roshi if they like to, and I did. And like you say, it's just the presence, and also like after this whole experience, because it's like basically at the final meditation, um, like you will be each one who wanted to speak to the Roshi will be just like tightly tapped on the shoulder during the meditation, one after the other, and then you have
I
to ring the
see.
bell, and then you are led to the chambers of the Roshi, and then while everyone else is still meditating, and then you have the conversation, you return, and then the next person goes, and so
I see.
you are just
Who was the Sorry, go on. No, this is very interesting. Who was the Roshi? May I ask?
he's Richard Baker Roshi.
Oh, I've heard of him. Richard Baker Roshi. Oh, yeah, he's American, right?
Yeah, he's American, and he brought Zen
From
basically
Suzuki.
to yeah, from Suzuki. Yeah,
I see. I
yeah.
see.
He was practicing
Wow.
with Suzuki in San
Oh,
Francisco.
wow.
Um,
Amazing.
at the
Goodness
San
gracious me.
Francisco,
Yeah,
I think it was called Zen Center or something like that.
yeah. Yeah. I've been there. I went there once just to visit.
Right.
God, that's really good. That's a good heritage.
Yeah, the lineage is great, and it's very
That's a good
direct.
lineage.
And
That's a good
I got to
lineage. Yeah.
spend yeah, quite some time with him.
Did
Um,
you?
and
Wow.
yeah, it's very nice. And so I asked him a couple of questions, and something that stuck with me is just like you said, it's always very simple, but like he just sat down and I was going on and blabbering on something, and he just he just looked at me very calmly, and then he was like, just now is enough. And I was, till today, one of the deepest teachings I've received. Just now is enough. I think that is
Yeah.
very powerful.
It's very powerful. That's really, yeah, really great. If you could live that in that realization all the time. Oh my God, that would be
Mm,
fantastic. It really would. It would be great. I mean, there would be no more. The question is, would you have moments of unhappiness? Well, I suppose not. Not if you're really there. No, you wouldn't anymore.
mm.
You probably wouldn't. Or if you did, you'd be able to handle it. You'd see it like a cloud in the sky or something, right?
Well,
Or maybe we shouldn't talk about this. Maybe this is the Tao that cannot be named.
I also think it's a very personal experience.
Hmm. That's a very important point.
Yeah, and so
That's a very important point. You're very right. It's really individual. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, that's very interesting though what you told me.
yeah, really.
With you see, I with Zen I found it very, but with Tibetan Buddhism I have visualizations. You see.
What are those like?
Oh my God. I don't know if I should even speak about it actually because
Mm,
I don't know if one should. You know.
yeah, I also don't. Yeah, true, true.
You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Yeah,
It's that deep that one I just don't feel comfortable speaking about it somehow.
yeah, that's okay.
You know, it's very, but all I can say is very, very, very healing, immensely healing. A surprising healing comes out of it for me. Really surprising. I never thought that would be possible. That you just visualize something and then tremendous healing comes to you. And you go out in the woods and you connect so much more, you know.
Yeah,
It's amazing from a visualization. That's for
absolutely.
me. That's my style. Whereas your style, I can't cope with Zen. It's too. I just can't. I get all my neurosis. Everything bubbles up like mad because I've got nothing to do, and I can't just watch it.
Yeah, that's funny because it's literally in the Heart Sutra is one of the lines goes, Gate, gate, para gate, which basically means beyond, beyond, and beyond. So, and you just, yeah, peeling the onion layer by layer. And another core teaching is basically nothing to do, nowhere to go. That's also another one. And it's exactly what you're describing. It's this, yeah, I mean, this is Zen. This is it at the core for me. One of the experiences is just this purest form of presence there is.
It's lovely.
And harmony with, to be in harmony with what is. And
Yeah.
and at the same time, Stefan, I got to tell you, my spiritual journey evolved a lot because I more and more now basically understand that there's also more to life, or at least the life that I want to be living, than just meditating and being with what is. I want to bring stuff to the world, and I also want to embrace and totally enjoy this human experience within the body, within the sensory suit that we are all equipped with, and with the feelings and the sensations that come along with it. That's a wonderful gift. And I feel like, just transcending into higher states of consciousness is, I mean, like I say, it was an elementary part of my journey, but it's just like, I don't know, I have this hunger to integrate those teachings into my life and to
Excellent.
embody
That's
it.
well done. That's excellent. I mean, when you were speaking, it brings to mind the tree of deep ecology. Do you want me to say something about that?
Yes, please.
In relation to what you've just said.
Absolutely.
It's very important.
Yes.
It's so important what you've just said. So, the idea of the tree of deep ecology goes back to Arne Næss, who I mentioned, the great Norwegian philosopher, who coined the term deep ecology. And his student, Per Ingvar Haukland, who's my dear friend and brother, Per Ingvar Haukland in Norway, spent years with Arne in his remote mountain cabin, where I've been 4 times. Amazing, wild place up in a mountain with snow, a landscape of snow and forest going on for hundreds of miles in all directions. I mean, unbelievably wild, wonderful, incredible place. So Per Ingvar took an idea from Arne, which Arne Næss, like a professional philosopher, came up with this very abstract picture called the apron diagram. It's very abstract. So Per Ingvar looks at this and he gets the image of a tree. You see, already I think that's very interesting, because the tree is a deep archetypal motif within the psyche of nature. The tree. And it comes in this relationship between Per Ingvar and his friend, and I knew Arne very well. He was an amazing person, Arne Næss. He's a really amazing person. This relationship between them, the tree manifests, which Per Ingvar I call it Per Ingvar's deep ecology tree. So, I mean, it gets very simple now. So basically, there's the roots of the tree are deep experience, like we were saying, like we both described. The transcendent state. That's the deep experience. It's down in the roots of the tree in some way. But then you see, you have to do something with it, like you were saying.
Yes.
That's very important, that urge, because the roots can't grow by themselves. So they form a trunk. They come out into the light, and they form a trunk, so more into the conscious mind, more into the thinking mind, maybe. And then you ask yourself, what do these experiences have in common? My own and various other people's. And then the trunk is something we have. All life has intrinsic value, irrespective of its usefulness to humans, right? Doesn't that chime with the deep experience? It does, doesn't it? Yeah. And then you end up, I won't go through them all, you end up with eight statements like this, which I think really sum up what it takes you from the depth of the experience, which is all life has intrinsic value, irrespective of its usefulness to humans. That's You would say that when you're in the experience, it's obvious to you, right? Then, very briefly, we shouldn't destroy this richness and diversity. Richness and diversity have intrinsic value. That's to say that biodiversity and the diversity of human cultures, they also have intrinsic value. You just know that, right? Then the third one is we mustn't destroy this richness and diversity. You see, we're all feeling this as we're in that deep experience you talked about, I've talked about. We know this from that deep experience, that we mustn't destroy this richness and diversity but we have to, because we're living in a physical universe, so we have to destroy some. So we can only destroy just enough to satisfy our vital needs, but no more than vital needs. And we have to discuss what they are, but shelter, a bit of food, but also vital needs to have lots of wild nature around you.
Yeah, I guess that's where it gets interesting. Yeah, what are vital needs?
It gets interesting, and we can discuss. But anyway, then we say we've got the wrong technology, ideology. The whole cultural orientation is not geared to satisfying vital needs, basically. And there's something about human population and per capita consumption. Then the last point is we have to do something. If you agree with the above points, you feel you must be you're obliged to do something in the real world, just like you said. It's very good that you feel that, you see.
Yeah,
and then when you start thinking of the options that you have, those are like the branches of the tree. And when you do an action, like we're doing this podcast, right?
Yes.
You could say this is our action, you and me. We're sharing the action together, right?
Yeah.
You're bringing from your deep experience. I'm bringing everything I can from my deep experience. We've gone from the experience. Now we're in the trunk. And we take an option. The option was to do this podcast. We make this podcast. This is our fruit. Maybe people will listen to it. This is our fruit. I mean, you're a podcaster. I'm I don't know what I am, a sort of teacher at Schumacher College, and it's natural that we should collaborate to make a fruit. So we make the fruit falls to the ground, people listen to the podcast, and that hopefully will nourish the deep experience of everybody.
Beautiful picture.
Yeah. Isn't that lovely? That's pairing vase. He calls it to be a bit more technical. Arnie would call this, what we've just discussed, an ecosophy, which is an ecological wisdom. So you see, it's very interesting. That experience, we can say something about it. We can say it has to do with ecological wisdom. Or better, Sophia. Sophia is present in that moment.
Yeah, beautiful.
Then the other interesting you can do with James Hillman and Thomas More, who I'm studying with at the moment. Thomas More, wonderful he is. Sophia is there in that moment. Let's say Sophia is there. That moment we were discussing, like you were telling me, I was telling you, your friend with the compost.
Yeah.
Imagine there's a figure called Sophia, wisdom. Who is she? So we could explore the myth of Sophia. We could try and learn something about that experience by following something about Sophia. And also, well, maybe I'm going too far, but also oikos, home. So it's first of all, when we have their experience, we're at home. Yeah? Don't you feel we're really at home?
Absolutely.
At last we're at home. Oh, what a relief. And then we have Sophia with us. I don't know quite what that means. I haven't explored it like this before, but it means there's a beauty about it, a beautiful presence, a lovely Sophic being, wisdom being is there with us. Sophia is feminine. So, here I have to be very careful. I'm a man, so is it feminine because I'm a man, or is it feminine objectively? I don't know. Anyway, so you see that sort of gets us somewhere. So where did we get to? Well, that's deep ecology, and Arnie Ness, and some Jungian psychology, and some James Hillman, all about that experience. But it's the experience itself is ineffable, of course.
Absolutely.
It's so wonderful. I mean, I wish every human being could wake up tomorrow with that experience. Every single one of us. And never lose it. Then we would make a Gaia fit for human. I think we'd make a Gaia that Gaia wanted us to make in a way, or was hoping we might make if things worked out okay in this particular experiment, in this particular bit of the universe, where it doesn't seem to be working out that well at the moment. But it doesn't matter, we shouldn't lose heart, you know. Even the effort to make it work will, if this whole view is correct, this worldview is correct, will affect the whole similar efforts elsewhere in the universe will be helped by what we do as deep supporters of the deep ecology, you could say, or even that, or the knowers of that experience, that deep experience, knowers of, you know, people who know it and value and understand it. The more we drop into that state, in relation to Gaia, in relation to the forest, to the nature, always in relation to nature, always. Well, you see, this is the interesting thing you said about going off in the transcendent realm. Maybe if we stick to Gaia, that she grounds us in her trees, her plants, her soils, and we can have that deep experience without going off in the transcendent realm, because it becomes rooted in Gaia. I prefer that.
Yeah, me too.
All right, let's look at going out looking in relation to Gaia. What do you think? Should we do that?
Yeah, we can.
I mean, would that be helpful for your podcast?
Yeah, it's all welcome. Absolutely.
You'd like to go?
I actually don't even look at it with the podcast. I never looked at it.
Oh, you don't?
It's actually funny. I never looked at it from a very, so on the one side it's very intentional, and then on the other hand it's not at all. So I guess that the only intention is to be here now with whoever I'm speaking.
Yeah. So you don't think about the audience then, eh? Or do you?
Well, my background is in marketing, so I should think about the audience all the time. But I
Oh, that's brilliant.
but it's actually very it's a little bit selfish of me, but like I don't know, this podcast is first and foremost, it's just like an expression of myself and the guest that I'm speaking with. And so far there seems to be a resonance with people outside of me and my guest, you know. There seems to be resonance with people who are listening to that, but I'm just trying not trying, but I'm doing my utmost best to not get caught in the wants and beliefs and needs of other people than myself. Really, I mean, you know, it might sound really selfish,
you're
but
spot on, Maxi. You're spot on. Very good. I'm very impressed.
Thank you.
So really impressive. So we have to talk about Gaia then. Now, so look, in terms of looking out, going in, that reminds me of a famous saying by, I think, oh God, we must check it. I think it was Walt Whitman. I think it was, no, it wasn't him. Hang on. It was another American. It was one of those American, his name will come to me. God, it's so important.
Right.
He said, when I go for a walk in the woods, I'm not going out, I'm going in.
Oh.
That's a paraphrase. John Muir, my God, he was something. John Muir, my goodness gracious me. I mean, he would climb up to the tops of trees in America, you know, around 1820 or so, I guess. He would climb to the tops of tall pine trees in thunderstorms, with the lightning crashing around him. I'm pretty sure this was John Muir. And he would just experience all that. Amazing. I have to read more of John Muir. Anyway, now hang on a second. So we're coming to Gaia. So the point is, so we're going, when we go outside, when we open the door and we say we're going outside, we're going in. Another practice I do with my folks.
Mm-hmm.
It's very simple. We're in the teaching room at Schumacher College, very beautiful place, honestly. Not like a university at all. I mean, lovely old building, gorgeous. And I say to them, okay, we're now going for a walk in Gaia, but we're going in. Now in the room we're outside, so everyone feels, wow, now I'm outside. Yeah, we're in this bubble of a room that we've created, and we're outside Gaia. But when we open the door, and I've been talking about Gaia, the feedback loops, and the story of James Lovelock and Lynn Margulis, and all the things that happened, and the myth of Gaia, all of that, we've done all that. You know, and we open the door. I've played them some music on my cuatro. I've given everything I can to create that moment.
Yeah.
And we open the door and say, okay, now we're going to walk in. We're in silence, and we're going in. And we walk out. Oh my God! Everyone feels really lovely. Everyone, we're all together. We're walking together in a line. I'm going in front. And we go through the forest and we walk together. And we're really inside. Oh, that's lovely. Sunny day like today. Lovely. And we're together. And we all come back, and after a while we go back in outside. We go in the room again. We sit down. Everyone goes, oh, my goodness, amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
So, I haven't said very much about Gaia yet. Apart from that, I would say that's the core of the Gaia experience.
So what is it?
The question,
yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Go on.
Yeah. What is it in?
For the thinking mind, you see.
Yeah, this
It's
happens.
got a
This
thinking
happens
mind.
to me with the podcast so often. Like I'll be
Yeah.
I'd be I'd be having like a conversation for like 2 hours about something, and I'm just like completely immersed in it. And then there's like sometimes feedback coming, basically like, all right, so okay, so that thing that you've been talking about the whole time, the definition comes after 2 hours.
Oh, I see.
And then I'm like, oh,
did I
okay.
define?
Like, was that important? I don't. But that's coming from the rational thinking mind, because, everybody can relate to just a conversation, but the thinking mind wants to know, a dictionary definition of a term that's being used,
Well,
other
we have
than
it.
just like the experience.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. But we have to realize the experience is primary.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying all the time.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the experience is primary. Yeah, the thinking mind now comes in and says, oh, yeah, come on, give me something. I mean, that's just bullshit. Otherwise, just bullshit. Give me something. Fair enough. Okay, well, I'll tell you, we got some great science here.
Right.
Wow. This is fantastic. Gaia science is absolutely fantastic. Science. Now I'm speaking as a PhD from Oxford in ecology, okay?
Mm-hmm.
As science. It's fantastic. Don't put that in. It sounds very egocentric. Don't put it in, please. Don't put that bit in.
I think it sounds.
But as a
it sounds incredible.
But it sounds sort of real, aren't I great? Well, I received a great education, and I'm very grateful to it, and I'm very proud I was at Oxford. I really am. It was wonderful, privilege for me. It was a tremendous soul-making privilege to be at Oxford. So, but you can't share because it sounds like you're showing off because you were at Oxford. Anyway, right, the science. So here comes James Lovelock. So around about 1960, the crisis was getting really bad, with lots of destruction of nature going on. And the scientific view of the Earth in those days, I mean, mainstream science, in journals like Nature, Science, Geology, etc., was that the Earth is basically a dead ball of rock. I mean, really, from our point of view, really big ball of rock that came out of a supernova star that exploded, And on the surface of that thin ball of rock, there's this little green smear of life. Insignificant. I mean, if you think of how the thickness of the biosphere on top of the rocky being of the Earth, rocky mass of the Earth, it's like a lick of paint on a school atlas. It's nothing. So the scientists thought, oh no, biosphere has no influence on the climate. And you could say, what about the oxygen? Doesn't that come from the 20% oxygen in the atmosphere? Doesn't that come from photosynthesis by living beings? Oh, no. That's created when water molecules are split by ultraviolet light high up in the atmosphere, where the ultraviolet rays, that's how we get the oxygen. And so, can you see, there was a real dead Earth view. And it was very consistent with destroying, mining the earth for minerals and cutting down the forests. Totally consistent with that, because it's dead. And it only has value if we turn it into money, obviously, this dead thing. And the biosphere is insignificant anyway, so it doesn't matter if we destroy it.
Yeah.
So, along comes James Lovelock, and he develops a completely different view. I mean, as a scientist, an ecologist, it just seemed extraordinary to me how this wasn't obvious right from the start, But a whole bunch of scientists, including biologists, geologists, people I was hanging out with, although we never discussed it, but if we had discussed it, they would have said Gaia's complete rubbish. Yeah, it's a dead Earth with a thin smear of life, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, Lovelock comes along, and he changes the picture. So he shows that life has huge impacts on the water, on the climate, and on the rocks. Water, atmosphere, rocks. Life has huge impacts. And now this is where it starts getting really interesting, from a scientific point of view, but also from a poetic point of view. When life starts affecting the atmosphere, rocks, and the water on the planet really deeply, those changes then feed back to determine which of the very biota can live within the conditions they themselves have created. And when you get this feedback loop, which is very, very hard for the thinking mind to comprehend, I don't think thinking mind really fully comprehend feedback loops. I think it needs a lot of intuition. Then this is the intuition that when you get those feedbacks between living beings, rocks, atmosphere, and water, which we can model mathematically to some extent, we can quantify, we can make some good measurements of different aspects of all this with our instruments, and we can make a pretty good mathematical model of it, actually. It's quite fantastic. When we get that feedback, you see, here comes the really interesting bit, which is where Gaia appears. And this is where you need the real intuition. It requires an intuitive leap, which is that when you get these feedbacks between all the living beings, the rocks, the atmosphere, and the waters, right? Out of all those relationships comes this emergent property, as we call it in science. It means a property of the whole, which you cannot fully define by understanding the parts of the whole in isolation. Right? Something comes out of the parts. Parts are interacting through feedback, like on Gaia, the rocks, the atmosphere, the water. Rocks, atmosphere, water, biosphere, atmosphere, etc. The four of them, they're interacting. And something amazing comes out of that. Now here it comes. It's very difficult to describe this, that the whole planet, the emergent property is that the planet as one huge organism, The planet is one huge living organism. Now, my fellow scientists don't like me talking about, not even Lovelock, he didn't want to say the Earth is alive. Exactly. He kind of said the Earth is life-like. That's as far as he would go, because he had to be very careful not to upset the scientists. But I would say the emergent property is that the planet is that one living organism, one great global ecology. It has to be. And this thing, this great ecology is what has an amazing property. It's able to sense the temperature of its atmosphere all over the place and somehow adjust the temperature through the interaction of all the living beings, the rocks, the atmosphere and the water, which we can quantify scientifically, and we have done in some cases to remarkable success. This whole thing can regulate its temperature. So if for some reason, imagine there's massive volcanic eruption somewhere and lots of CO2 goes into the atmosphere. It's complex what happens, but let's say, to keep it simple, the temperature goes up. Then the plants and the organisms, they grow better in that warmer temperature. There's more evaporation from the ocean, so there's more rain. The rain falls onto the forest, where the forest is putting its roots into granite rock. And in the granite rock, there's an ion called calcium, which I like to call a princess. But then I don't want to. For me, calcium is a princess. I can't help it, you see. And then you can tell a whole story about how the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which the excess carbon dioxide, meets the calcium ions in the granite through the action of life, through the roots of the trees cracking open the granite and allowing water to come down, and bacteria growing in the cracks. You know, it's a huge, life becomes a huge breather of carbon dioxide and water, which together make an acid, carbonic acid, that removes the calcium out of the rock. You see how we've got the science in tremendous detail. I mean, I need to go on with that story just to finish it. But you see the scientific detail that's there.
Amazing.
Are you satisfied so far by that, by all that science?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting. Go on, please.
Okay. Because you're right that you ask for the thinking mind to have something to chew on. But listen to this.
Absolutely.
So that, I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? So now the carbon that was in the atmosphere has been dissolved out of the rock through the action of the forest, the life. Without the life, that process would happen, but much more, maybe 100,000 times more slowly, depending on whether you're in the tropics or in the high latitudes, more or less. Yeah? It's going to happen much more slowly, but so we call it biologically, or Lovelock called it, biologically assisted silicate rock weathering. I mean, there's a nice bit of science for you, you know. So, anyway, we've got the calcium in and the carbon together now, and they go into the ocean. They wash down there from the mountains, the granite mountain, to the ocean. Guess what happens in the ocean? This is unbelievable.
Well, I wouldn't know.
Are you ready?
I'm not a scientist, but
it's unbelievable. So but listen to this. In the ocean, there are these single-celled algae called coccolithophores, and they really need calcium for making their shells. They make exquisite shells. They're submicroscopic, but they're beautiful. They're like the one called Emiliania huxleyi makes these shells that look like mandalas, I tell you. The point is, this little alga on the surface of the ocean, it really needs calcium, and here it comes from washed out from the mountains thanks to the action of the forest. The little alga gets her calcium bicarbonate. Calcium bicarbonate contains also the carbon that was in the atmosphere. So the point is that the stuff that the alga is taking in is calcium bicarbonate. So it has the calcium that she needs, but the carbon is carbon that was in the atmosphere and it's been stripped out by this process. You see, that carbon that got in there through the volcanic eruptions we had at the beginning, slowly, they're all taken out by this process. Every single one of them. It might take 300,000 years or so, but eventually that's what happens, and they all end up in the ocean.
Incredible.
But we haven't finished yet. Maybe I want to finish the cycle for you.
Yes.
Because you see, the thing is, you can meditate on the cycle. You see, you learn it with the thinking mind. You learn it. So I've tried this out with quite a few folks. We learn it with our thinking mind, but we know what we're doing. We're doing in the learning with the thinking mind in service of Gaia, in service of that experience. Because I think that experience, when we have that experience, it's good for Gaia. It's not just good for us. Gaia wakes up. Gaia realizes there are still human beings who understand her in the modern world, and it's us. Well, I don't want to make an us. This is one way to do it.
Yeah.
Put it like that. So anyway, so in order to do that, we have to finish the cycle. So when the algae, they're also, just a minute, they die, they sink to the bottom of the ocean, and they're taking with them that carbon that was in the atmosphere that came from the volcanic eruptions, right? It's now in the bottom of the ocean, linked to a calcium ion in this beautiful round structure, the mandala of calcium carbonate. Yeah, can you imagine? But there's billions and billions and billions and billions. And they make huge deposits, massive deposits of limestone, huge. And these algae get squashed further down by the weight of the sea and geological forces, and they're made into rock.
Right.
Every single carbon atom in that rock, which we call, it could be limestone, could be chalk. If it's soft, it's called chalk. If it's hard, it's called limestone. It's actually calcium carbonate. And every single carbon was once in the atmosphere. And this really cools the earth, huh? The problem is, the problem is, the first problem was getting the carbon out of the atmosphere because it was too hot. And we put it in the chalk. Now the problem is you've got to put the carbon back before it gets too cold.
Right. Okay.
And if it gets too cold, the whole Earth can freeze into a snowball. That's happened a few times. It's called snowball Earth. Wow. So how does that happen? All right, just to finish. You see, this is a meditation. It's a meditation. So now we bring in plate tectonics. Wow. Yeah. You see that now the deep Earth is involved. The radioactive energy decay that's going on in the deep Earth, that's making the plates move. That's involved now. Now that has to be there for this whole for Gaia to exist. That has to be there. You see, isn't that lovely? Can you feel that? Isn't it lovely to feel that? It's a kind of, I get this experience in my solar plexus. It's like a horror thing, I think. You might be able to connect that kind of moment in the meditation to the hara. I don't know. You see, the possibilities are. Anyway, so then the plate tectonics move, and on top of say we've got two plates, they're carrying limestone from these dead algae, which have the carbon in them from the atmosphere, right? Then they crash. So there's huge energy below, moving these thin plates of rock right on the surface, and then they crash. And that chalk is pushed down deep into the earth, into the really hot, really hot. And there, the chalk melts, and it combines with water. I mean, there's a real cooking process going on down there. I mean, this is where I get very alchemical. It feels very alchemical to me what's going on there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's on a massive energy, huge. Really massive energies are required, thousands of degrees. Well, I think so, up to 1,000 degrees. This is where I have to check the books, but maybe 800-900 degrees centigrade, really hot, and the rock melts, and the carbon dioxide is released. The carbon is free from the rock, and it's back in the form of carbon dioxide. So a lot of that carbon that was taken out has now come back in contact with oxygen and made carbon dioxide, CO2, and that bubbles out through a volcano and stops the Earth from freezing over.
Wow.
Now, just to finish, the most amazing thing is some of my scientific colleagues who are very clever like this, they've made really good mathematical models of this to see what happens over time. And the point is that it regulates the temperature. It regulates the temperature.
Incredible stuff, isn't it?
It's very beautiful because, because the whole Earth. I mean, Lovelock didn't go this far in his writing, anyway. Nor did Lynn Margulis, the two great pioneers of Gaia theory, with whom I must say, it sounds like bragging again. But I was very lucky to work with them both. I mean, incredible. I can tell you a lot about that. But that's for another matter, another time. Do you get the point I'm saying? You see how this... Now let's just backtrack, see where we got to. So you made the very good point that we were focusing on experience. But what about the thinking mind? So I said, okay, let's look at some Gaian science. It's pretty good for the thinking mind. Pretty nice. And here we are, we've gone through all that thinking. And then we have other things like, the famous Wood Wide Web. That's what the fungi are doing underground, connecting all the plants up together. That's a paradigm shift. My friend Merlin Sheldrake's written a wonderful book about that. Anyway, you see, so there's plenty of science there. So the point is that I can feel comfortable that the Earth is alive. Wow. I mean, it's not entirely a hippie thing. It's also got tremendously high caliber science behind it, which I like high caliber science, I tell you, because it shuts up my thinking mind and puts it in the place of humility.
Absolutely.
I think, great. I mean, also, what a gift to think like this. There's even a guy, well, I won't go into it too much, but the early criticisms of Gaia by the neo-Darwinists, that's really... The collision between neo-Darwinism and Gaia theory has produced something really spectacular in science, which I don't think it's only just beginning to be explored. That collision between those two opposites, you see. Anyway, I don't know if you want me to go down that route, because it gets a little bit technical on the scientific side, a little bit.
Yeah, well, we
so maybe that's enough.
I wanted to get like in some more, just like some quicker questions towards the end.
Yes, please.
That I
Sure.
wanted to definitely get in.
Okay.
Before we lose sight of that, and that is, I wanted to ask you what you are proud of.
That's a question. Well, I can answer you from a very deep place, a very personal place, or from a more professional sort of place. Which would you like?
What do you think?
I mean, I have to say something about my inner life. I have to.
Yeah.
So I won't go into details, but overcoming some very, very serious obstacles or problems that I've had in my life. I think really dealing with them to a very, very good degree. I'm quite pleased with that. That's the thing I've been most proud of, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing one can be proud of, to be honest with you. But the rest of it, what am I proud of? I don't think pride is the right word. I think I would rather say honoured. What are things that have honoured me, That's better, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I think being one of the founders of Schumacher College, that's an honour, a wonderful honour. Then another one I remember, when I was doing a deep time walk online for some folks in Africa, some Africans, who really work to protect the bush and have this very deep. I've spent time in Africa, in the bush, so I know about it. This deep I can't describe this deep feeling for nature, the African. Oh, fantastic! Oh my God! And they had this, and I was taking them through a deep time walk online. And then one of the elder ladies, we were doing it online. She said to me, "Oh, I know this is probably the deepest professional honor, if you like, in my work that I've ever had. This is the deepest honor I've ever had in my work." That woman who I'd led on the deep time walk who works in the bush, sort of African woman in the bush, but real connection with the trees and with the plants and with exactly as I felt it myself when I was there, and exactly as I was gifted it by the bush when I was there. She said to me something like, "Stephan, you are one of our elders." I would say that's the greatest honor I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
Really.
That's beautiful.
Really, I treasure that moment so much. I treasure that moment. It's wonderful. Oh, that was the best thing anyone's ever said to me. Pretty much. Because now I can feel that connection. When I think of that, I'm connected to that wonderful wild bush country, which taught me so much. Oh, when I was 19, my God, that was an experience I had to have. Otherwise, I couldn't do this work without that.
Stephan, what are you looking forward to?
Oh God, what a question! I'm looking forward to a Gaian world in which beings with our sorts of consciousness can live and thrive and help the whole planet to thrive, help Gaia thrive in her self-realization, which requires wild country, a very, very large amount of wild country, maybe 70%, with us, with her, on the journey of self-discovery with her, with our planet. If I could live in a society like that, my goodness. I look forward to that. I mean, it will happen sooner or later, somewhere in the universe. It will happen. That's as far as I can go, That's what I look forward to that. In other words, I think you could say from an intellectual point of view, I'm a Spinozist. Spinoza, he said, the universe. Look, don't get me wrong. I haven't read Spinoza because I can't. It's like you. I just can't I can't bear it. It's too rational. But I'm told by my friends, really good philosophers, that Spinoza said there is a purpose in the trajectory of the universe. So there's a purpose, and it's good, and we need to align ourselves with it. That's the fundamental intellectual premise of mine. What if that's true? I mean, I don't want to accept it as a truth without really examining, looking at it, but I think it's pretty good. From what I've learned about the universe, from the science, I'd say there is a purpose, so I look forward to the fulfillment of that purpose with humans involved, or something like humans involved, with this kind of consciousness, because this is what she wants. She needs this kind of consciousness that we have. I look forward to the time when we can realize what that consciousness is and work towards cultivating and offering it to the greater, this incredible, grand story of self-realization, which the universe is all about. Something like that.
Beautiful.
And that's what I look forward to. I mean, that really, you asked me, so that's what I look forward to.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
If that is not I think that's a beautiful, beautiful finishing touch to what it what was. I think also for me a very deep experience, and I feel very understood in your presence and very seen, and so I deeply,
that's lovely.
I deeply appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Oh, well, thank you. That's really nice you said that. Yeah, well, I feel the same. I mean, I don't think I've done a podcast anything like this one before. I've been so incredibly open,
Yeah, thank you. I deeply appreciate that.